Welcome back to the Lovers of God series. I'd like to pick up where I left off from the last video. I was talking about the tree of life. That the tree of life was in the beginning of the Bible and it was in the end of the Bible. And I was sharing that in the Garden of Eden, there was a tree of life that was forbidden for humanity to partake of. And the reason for it is that the tree of life is the knowledge to become sons and daughters of God, to become divine. And of course, if man was to partake of that, fallen from the Father or separated from the Father, then they would become like Satan and the fallen angels, unreachable. They would have no desire to want to have the Father because they would create their own utopia and their own kingdom where they would rule and reign as fallen sons of God, as angels are fallen. But I wanted to move on to the tree of life at the end of the Bible because it's a great picture of what it means to have the fellowship of the Father. And it's in Revelations, there's a picture of the throne room of God, and there's a crystal blue river flowing from the throne room of God. And the throne room of God represents His presence, His glory, His beauty, eternal life. And the stream is the water of life coming from the presence of the Lord. And along the stream is planted the tree of life. And on both sides of the river. And this is where the tree draws up from the water of life its source of being alive, of being filled with the Father's presence. And then it bears fruits, 12 different kinds of fruits every month. And it's the fruit and the leaves of the tree of life that bring healing to the nations. So you could see this kind of beautiful picture of those who come into the lovers of God, who come into becoming the sons and daughters of God, have the presence and the word of the Lord. And the fruit is the things that we say, and the leaves are the things that we do that bring healing to the world, healing to the nations. And it's all tied together. And so the tree of life is the key of what we will become. It's the knowledge of becoming the lovers of God. And the paradigm relationship is part of that knowledge of what it is to become the tree of life, to partake of God, and to do the work upon the earth as rightfully ours, to rule and to reign and to dwell on the earth with the Father and the Son, and to see goodness prevail, to see the kingdom of heaven prevail upon the earth. Well, so where do we go from here? Jesus talked about that He's the way, the truth, and the life. What is it that we must pursue or do to become lovers of God? And there is a scripture, actually Psalms 23. There's a story I'd like to share with you. Back in 1995, I was really in a place where that longing that I talk about, the soul that longs, there's a thirst that in all the things I was doing as a Christian and as a follower of the Lord seemed to come to an end. There was this sense for the first time in my life, felt this hunger, this deep hunger and thirst that was both motivating but also sorrowful. There's like a cry that's deep within the soul for the Father, for more. And that I remember saying, Lord, I must go on with you, whatever the price, whatever the cost. This is like, it pushes you towards this incredible choice that you have to make. And out of that, then a series of events began to occur in my life, quite rapidly, right away, within a matter of a week or two. And it was a crisis that came. And I find myself separated from my wife and back home, actually at my parents' house. They had a trailer in the backyard, and I was just like, my head was spinning. I was lost. There was a lot of grief and sorrow and uncertainty about my future. And I remember just crying out to the Lord, Lord, I need something. What is this? I need something to sustain me. And he gave me Psalms 23. And it's a common scriptures. It's the Lord's shepherd's psalm. And so, it's kind of like, well, I know this, but I took it and I memorized it and I read it over and over. And I realize now, looking back, I didn't quite know in the beginning, you never really do, but looking back, I realized that this is the roadmap, the journey that one must take to become the lovers of God, to realize that the Father has to come to you in a way that we at first are kind of frightened of, in fact even terrified of, is this exposure. There's this inward journey that we must take. So what I would like to do is to kind of walk through the Psalms and to kind of talk about what's this way that Jesus kept referring to. I'm the way. And so, it's this inward journey of being exposed to really what's within the soul, both the woundedness and the sorrow and the grief, but also our vices and virtues that we use to try to cope in life, try to get on in life, try to give us a sense of worth and self-identity and value, and we use everything in every way that we can to try to somehow survive or to thrive or to become successful. And so the verse starts off with, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. The Lord is my shepherd is like the cornerstone of the rest of the text. It really, it's the place where you realize that the Lord is my shepherd. He's the one that needs to lead me and guide my life, and I do not want, I shall not want. That sense of letting go of the things that you've looked towards growing up in your life, even as a believer in the Lord, that we had kind of like taken on and believed in, that would protect us, protect the soul, or to help us deal with the shame. Remember the anguishes of the soul, the shame and the fear and the self-contempt and the longing. We turn to things to either help us to deny it, suppress it, or to change it, or to heal it. And so you must realize that, no, the Lord, He has to lead you down into this inward journey to take a look at the darkness that is there. He must deal with the darkness. He must deal with those things that we have given our hearts and our mind and our soul to and our will to. Because if you want to become a lover of God, you cannot love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength until those things that you have like divided your love between the Lord and the world. You must let go of all those things in the world in order to love entirely with the Father. There is no in-between. It's either this or that. And so the Lord must take us on this sanctification, this cleansing, this purification, where His light comes and exposes the things that we don't want to look at. And so He's our shepherd and He leads us. And the first thing that He'll begin to do, and it says He makes me lie down in green pastures. Okay, this is something he says he makes you. So this is like almost you give him permission to do this work in your life, and then he like grabs a hold of you, and he's like he forces you right to stop, to lie down, even though it's green pastures, but to stop. And so we have become so preoccupied and busy with so much stuff, and our life is like spinning, even spiritual things and things with your ministry or your calling. You could be so caught up and so busy in the world that the Lord has to like stop you. He says, no, stop. So there's a place of inactivity, a place that you must come to rest. Stop all the activity, because the activity is a way to distract us often from the deep pains of our hearts and soul. And so he makes you lie down. There are things in your life that could happen to kind of stop you. You may have come down with an illness or injury, or you lose your job. Something happens, and all of a sudden you find yourself stopping, slowing down, because it's being forced upon you. And this is the work of the Lord, to begin to deal deeply within you. And then it says, he leads me besides quiet waters or still waters. See? So one, he kind of forces you. Now he begins to lead you, like taking your hand. He says, now come and be quiet. And this is a place of quieting your mind, like becoming silent. You need to stop the yelling and the screaming and the like the bargaining with God and arm wrestling with Him and praying and fasting because you want things to go a certain way, your way, trying to save yourself. And so the Lord will like lead you to a place of stillness. So inactivity and silence and quietness, because this is how we somehow survive and get along in life, is all of this activity. And so the quiet things, so the quiet waters is kind of representing the stillness of life. And there, out of that place of stopping and stillness and quietness, He begins to restore your soul. The Father begins to heal the woundedness within your heart, and the woundedness of the soul, and the shame begins to heal you. No longer your way, but His way. And He does this in a unique way. He can come to you out of your anguish and sorrow and speak one word to you. And you feel this relief. You feel the sorrow go. I remember in the incident where my father, this is later on in his life, but he was struggling with alcoholism, and he has a temper. This isn't, remember when I share about my dad, this is just a part of his life. He was a great man, and I loved him to death. But there was a time where he really got lost into this longing and the shame and the self-contempt, and alcohol was a way of like numbing his soul, and so he had gotten drunk one night, and we were trying to intervene to get him some help, and he had weapons in the house and shooting the gun, and it was actually turned out to be the best intervention. He called the police, and he was sent to the hospital, and there he was able to receive some help. But he was an avid gun owner, and when he came back, his guns were all taken away from him, and he was extremely angry about this. And when I shared with him, because he was blaming the family, blaming my brother-in-law for doing this when it was actually all of my doing, and when I shared with him this was actually my doing, he became extremely angry. Just it's almost like this rage. He was just raging towards me, and all of this vile cursing, just this hatred coming towards me, and it was like the thing from childhood up, just piercing deep within my heart. And I remember I just turned and left because I was both in pain but also rage myself. And I remember just walking, and I go, there it is. This is the deep wound within me where I had been running my whole life and trying to cover it up or trying to fix it and trying to change it. And it was just being revealed. It was right there in my face. And then the Father came to me, and He spoke into my life. The words that I've always wanted to hear from a father, and how much He loved me, and it was like all that pain just dissipated. It just seemed to like run right out. It just kind of, and peace came upon my heart. It was just this instant healing that came over me. And so sometimes the Father brings you into circumstances that you don't want to deal with because it's very painful, but He has to like put His finger on the area of woundedness, and it hurts. But out of that pain, He could speak life into you and raise you up. And so there's these are the kind of experiences that you go through. And this is that part where He's quieting your mind or stopping your activity and then healing your soul. Okay. So what I like to do at this point is stop, and we could talk about more of this in the next video about the pathway of coming to know the Father through Psalms 23, because it is a roadmap. It was something that was precious to me and gave me clarity and some hope and some direction, and I want to pass on to you. Okay, thank you.